Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
When you take a look at the consumers in China, it remains challenging.
We go there.
To what extent is access to cheap credit part of the equation?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery's running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked breads to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Psst. We've got something to tell you about the Honda Jazz. We know it looks small, but inside, it's really big. That's why we've created the small but big Jazz event, where you can get 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing on all grades until the 31st of January. The Honda Jazz, the small car with the big offer. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Owning your own business doesn't automatically make you an accounting expert. So it's good to know that when you choose to manage your money with Sage, you don't just get great business management at your fingertips. You get great local support too. Anytime, anywhere. Simple solutions from Sage. Trusted by over 1 million British businesses to manage finances, operations, and people. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
Christmas is almost here, and at Asda, we've got your favourite spirits for just £16 each. That's £16 for a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff vodka or Gordon's gin, or a 70 centilitre bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland. Drink aware.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks edge into fresh record territory as investors chase gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year alone. Government bonds are down around the world as a string of central banks keep their interest rates steady while one raised its benchmark. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 0.1%, up 5. The Dow's up 0.25%, up 70. And the Nasdaq's up 0.2%, up 15. The 10-year is down 5/30 seconds with a yield of 1.93%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.1% at 61.02 a barrel, while COMEX gold is little changed at 14.7960 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 109.34, the euro $1.11.17, and the British pound $1.30.31. Sales of previously owned U.S. homes declined to a 5-month low in November, indicating lean inventories are holding back a residential real estate market that's been supported by low mortgage rates and job growth. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
It is late December 2019. We want to look into our crystal ball and figure out what the U.S. economy is going to look like in 2020 and beyond. And there is no better way to do it than to look at leading economic indicators, which is basically as close as we're going to get to a crystal ball or an 8-ball or Ouija board or whatever you want to choose. We're lucky to have with us Ataman Ozil-Darim. He is Senior Director of Economics and Global Research at the conference board, joining us here about the leading economic indicator index. We did see it stable, indicating some support. Can you give us a sense, though, of the churn underneath of the various components of this index? What is driving forward this sort of confident outlook going into 2020?
Right. Good morning. Thanks for having me. The index was stable, so it's kind of consistent with this economy that's settling into around a 2% growth rate, right? And underneath that, of course, there is a lot of churn, as you said, and there are sort of offsetting components among those. So financial indicators have been supporting the index. The housing indicators are supportive, and especially the consumer outlook on the economy and business conditions are very supportive for the overall conditions. What's been weaker is manufacturing new orders. So those are sort of offsetting the gains, and there's some softening in the labor markets as well.
What are you seeing in terms of housing? We had some data come out today that existing home sales fell to a 5-month low, I guess, on lean inventories. What's your data telling you about housing? Is it such a big part of the consumer's net worth?
So there's been kind of a shift happening in housing and especially construction. The leading part of the housing sector is housing permits, and a component of the leading economic index. And housing permits actually contributed strongly. So looking ahead, there are more permissions required for building activity, and I think that's being supported by the interest rates, the sort of mortgage rates coming down. So I think what you saw today might be a temporary blip, and we do expect the housing to be supportive for the economy.
You said that there was a little bit of softening in the labor side of things. What do you mean by that, considering the fact that we have such an unemployment rate, such a low unemployment rate, and we seem to be getting an increasing number of employers who are saying it's very difficult to hire people?
Yeah, so the average work week in manufacturing was unchanged in November after a decline, and unemployment insurance claims went up a little bit. So those are sort of a softening of the leading indicators from the labor side.
But that's only in manufacturing, or is that beyond?
That is manufacturing, and there are some special circumstances that might be affecting those. Earlier in the fall, we had the strike, manufacturing workers. So as those kind of wind down, we do expect the jobs outlook to remain fairly strong, although we're later in the maturing business cycle, so we don't really expect a huge boost on the job side.
So you were mentioned earlier that economic growth is likely to stabilize around 2% in 2020. What do you think is the risk, the greatest risk to that number based upon the data that you guys follow?
So in our outlook, we looked at the greatest risk coming from really global uncertainties. So the global economic outlook is affected by the uncertainty in Europe. Brexit, of course, is an element in that. And emerging markets, we would expect them to do a little bit better in 2020. But there are, a number of uncertainties from the geopolitical aspect and as well as the economic side.
We talk about the leading economic index, and that typically is a 6-month predictor, right? More or less?
More or less.
And does this cohere with the consensus call right now, which is a stable U.S. economy, supporting sort of a slow growth, not accelerating too much to sort of stymie the bond rally or get rates up to stymie the stock rally, keep everything on track? Is that sort of consistent?
That's consistent. The leading indicators are pretty sensitive to both growth slowdowns as well as predicting business cycles turndowns. And what we've been seeing in the leading indicators is a kind of settling into that average growth rate around 2%. It's a stabilization of the economy, and that's what we predict for 2020.
Just real quickly, how does your index capture kind of the uncertainty around trade? Is that just some survey work that you do?
So in the index, there are numbers on new orders in manufacturing, and one of them comes from the ISM survey, and the new orders in manufacturing, and that has been suggesting this weakness, and that's an element of uncertainty that's reflected. Some of the uncertainty creeps into things like stock prices too, which can be very volatile.
Ataman Ozil-Darim, thank you so much for joining us. Ataman is a Director of Economic Research and Global Research Chair at the Conference Board, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Again, the leading economic indicator came in at flat today, 0.0%. It's a smidge better than consensus after several months of decline, so a little bit of support there. Kind of consistent with, I guess, their call for a 2% GDP growth in 2020.
Yeah, consistent with what the consensus calls are heading into next year. Interesting to see how the industrial sector, the manufacturing sector, continues to see to lag behind, yes. And yet it's been compensated for with strength elsewhere, in particular with consumer sentiment. I do have to wonder. Inflation really is what I'm curious about. I'm curious about tomorrow's income and spending numbers out of the consumer to see what that means and tells us on the inflation front.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been the consumer that's been supporting this economy, really, and I think that's an expectation for 2020 as well. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are edging toward fresh records as investors are chasing gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. President Trump is said to have called Boeing on Sunday to ask CEO Dennis Muilenburg about the company's health. That was one day before the plane maker said it would suspend production of the grounded 737 MAX. Muilenburg assured the president that any potential stoppage would be temporary and there would be no layoffs. Shares of Micron Technology are higher. The company gave a strong sales forecast for the current quarter and told investors it's through the worst of a slump in the memory chip industry. Micron is the biggest maker of memory memory chips. And the claws are out for Cats. Only about 16% of critics have recommended the movie on Rotten Tomatoes. That would make it a career worst for British director Tom Hooper, who won an Academy Award for The King's Speech. The film cost $95 million to make, according to Box Office Mojo. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Christmas songs.
Sound great, don't they?
None of them sound great to me anymore.
Not even the one that goes skiddly-boo, skiddly-boo, skiddly.
No, definitely not that.
Well, how about the new Sonos Beam Smart Soundbar with the Google Assistant, so you can enjoy great sound and control it with your voice?
Can it play the blues?
More than blues, Mark. It plays millions of songs, and it's only £329, saving you £70.
Millions of non-Christmas songs. Sounds great.
Make anyone's Christmas with the Sonos Beam Smart Soundbar at Curry's PC World. Was $399 from 31st October to 27th November 19.
Owning your own business doesn't automatically make you an accounting expert. So it's good to know that when you choose to manage your money with Sage, you don't just get great business management at your fingertips, you get great local support too. Anytime, anywhere. Simple solutions from Sage. Trusted by over 1 million British businesses to manage finances, operations, and people. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
Christmas is almost here, and at Asda, we've got your favourite spirits for just £16 each. That's £16 for a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff vodka or Gordon's gin, or a 70 centilitre bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland. Drink aware.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2010, the passing of the Affordable Care Act brings Obamacare to millions of uninsured Americans. In 2015, a ruling by Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage across the country. And in 2018, millions of students skip school to protest for stronger gun control in the March for Our Lives.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break. You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
To the sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown. touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, yesterday, President Trump became the third president ever to be impeached by the House of Representatives. We're going to talk about that with Ramesh Ponnuru, senior editor at the National Review. Plus, we're going to talk about emerging markets and how a lot of people think that is going to be the outperforming area next year. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Karen Moscow for Bloomberg Business Flash. Karen.
The S&P pushed higher a day after snapping a 5-day rally, although moves were muted again for as traders geared up for the holidays. The benchmark is up 7% in the fourth quarter and 27% so far this year. Drew Mattis, chief market strategist, MetLife Investment Management, tells Bloomberg there are several things to watch for early 2020.
The trade deal's a good question. We're going to see more information on Brexit as they begin to negotiate a separation agreement, and that process goes further forward. So those will be things to be watching out for. And then, of course, the labor market's been so strong, at some point that's got to stop. And when it stops, it's not necessarily a sign that things are going to get worse, but rather than we have to start thinking about what might be happening to wages and then inflation.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.2% up 5. Dow's up 0.25% up 67. NASDAQ's up 0.3% up 24. The 10-year is down 3/32 with a yield of 1.92%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.2% at 61.04 a barrel. COMEX gold's little changed at 14.79.70 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.30. The euro's $1.11.11. The British pound $1.30.22. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Ramesh Ponnuru, senior editor of the National Review, and also Bloomberg opinion columnist based in Washington, D.C. So, again, a historic day yesterday, the impeachment of President Trump in the House of Representatives. To get the latest on next steps, let's welcome Ramesh. Ramesh, thanks so much for joining us. What are the next steps here over the next several days and weeks?
Well, the first thing that has to happen is the Democratic leadership in the House has to make a decision about transmitting those articles of impeachment to the Senate. There has been some debate among Democrats about what the right thing to do is, with some Democrats believing that the right thing to do is to wait until there is some sort of guarantee that the Senate will take procedures seriously for a Senate trial, and then maybe not, and if such assurances are not forthcoming, perhaps not even transmit them at all. So that's the first thing that has to happen. The Democrats, if they decide to then transmit the articles, it will then become a question for the senators as to when and how to begin a trial.
So I'm wondering, Ramesh, I was looking at some of your recent columns and some of the recent columns in the National Review, and you are pretty critical of Republicans who are saying that they are impartial heading into the Senate hearing and basically saying that they aren't taking that line at all. They're just supporting President Trump. Can you explain your view, given the fact that the National Review is thought of as a conservative-leaning publication?
Well, yes, we are a conservative publication. I'm a conservative. I do think that the charges against President Trump are serious and ought to be taken seriously. The tricky thing in these debates about impeachment is that they are political, but at the same time, they are politics in a kind of higher register or at a higher level than sort of your day-to-day wrangling over tax policy or an appropriations bill. And so I don't think that we can ask that the senators conduct themselves the way an impartial juror would conduct themselves. But I do think it is fine to ask them to take the constitutional rule seriously and not simply to side with their president because they share the same party, or to oppose the president because they disagree with them on a lot of political issues. And so far, it doesn't look as though senators are undertaking that responsibility terribly seriously.
Ramesh, as a conservative and as the editor of a conservative-leaning publication, what do you think of the fact that there is so much unanimity among the Republican Party lining up behind President Trump here?
Well, I think we're in a pretty partisan era, and the founders would not have been shocked. They didn't foresee a lot of things. They didn't foresee the development of the modern party system, but they did understand that impeachment would arouse the passions of the community and become attached to whatever previous political debates were taking place. So it's not surprising, but I think it's worth pushing against. It is worth trying to step back, whether you're a conservative or a liberal, and trying to think through questions of institutional responsibility. What should a president be doing? How should a Congress hold presidents accountable for misconduct?
So, Ramesh, how do you think this should play out? Do you think the Republicans should act, both the Republicans and Democrats should look at the evidence, treat this as a trial and weigh the evidence and come up with the most just outcome? Or do you think it should just be a political situation?
I think that the right thing to do is to go back to first principles to take the responsibility of being in the Senate more seriously than the responsibility of being in a political party. And that means if you are a Democrat, not taking the cheapest and easiest shots, and not trying to block the Republicans from making a defense. And if you're a Republican, I think it means not having a kind of knee-jerk response of just sort of supporting whatever the White House is saying.
Just 30 seconds here, Ramesh. If you were in the Senate as a Republican, how would you vote?
I would vote to convict. I think the president has abused his power, and that we ought to say that that's unacceptable.
Ramesh Ponnuru, thank you so much for being with us. Ramesh Ponnuru is senior editor for the National Review, also a Bloomberg opinion columnist, joining us from Washington, D.C. Interesting, sort of the polarization right now. You are getting very much a divided Congress, whether it's in the House or in the Senate, according to party lines. And you're seeing it just absolutely reflected in the polls in the public in terms of people who voted for President Trump saying that this is not prudent, he should not be impeached, and people who voted against or for Hillary Clinton going the opposite way. Yeah, and it's interesting, as Ramesh mentioned, the next, thing to look for is what will the Democrats do in the House in terms of actually transmitting these orders of impeachment to the Senate. When will they do it? Will they do it? Let's right now head to Washington, D.C. Our 99.1 studios. Amy Morris there with World and National Headlines. Amy.
All right, thank you, Lisa. We're watching all of that as well. Plus, just a day after the president was impeached, the House is expected to approve the new North American Trade Pact today. That's known as USMCA. But final approval in the Senate is going to have to wait until next year. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro with the story.
With Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell unwilling to bring the trade deal to a vote until after an impeachment trial ends, Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman says he doesn't expect support for it to ebb in the meantime.
This agreement is very popular, and the reason is it's a replacement for NAFTA, which is the existing agreement between Canada and Mexico that's 25 years old and outdated.
But a group of vulnerable House Democrats is imploring McConnell to take care of it this year. They've already spent 2019 deflecting criticism. They were part of a Democratic majority holding up ratification of the USMCA. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Republican Representative Mark Meadows, one of President Trump's staunchest allies in the U.S. House, has announced he will be resigning from Congress. Meadows is one of the founders of the House Freedom Caucus. He tells Politico he does not have a specific job with the Trump administration locked down, but signaled he might try to work for his re-election campaign or somewhere within the administration. A Republican group is launching a new ad that is targeting Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. The Hill reports the new Republicans for the Rule of Law ad quotes Graham pushing the Senate to allow witness testimony during the impeachment of former President Bill Clinton. Graham has said that he will reject any attempts to call witnesses during President Trump's Senate trial. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Christmas, a time for sharing gifts and laughter, and photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10 gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks move higher following encouraging profit reports from several big companies. Trading around the world, though, is mostly listless as the holidays approach. President Donald Trump had warned months ago that his impeachment would roil markets, but traders say it has virtually no impact. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. Looking strong for the S&P, up 0.2%, up 7. The Dow's up 0.3%, up 91. And the NASDAQ is up 0.3%, up 30. The 10-year is down 3/32 with a yield of 1.92%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.2% at 61.07 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.1% at 14.8020 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.31. The euro $1.1114, and the British pound $1.3013. TiVo, the inventor of the digital video recorder and technology licensor Xperi Corporation, have agreed to merge in an all-stock transaction valued at $1.21 billion. TiVo is up 8%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Adipar. Adipar's portfolio reporting and insights platform is trusted by thousands of wealth advisors from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions. Learn more at addepar.com. Let's talk about emerging markets. This is another consensus call heading into 2020, is that emerging markets will outperform on the heels in part of a weaker dollar. Joining us now to talk about this, Vincent Deluard. He is a global macro strategist at INTL FC Stone, based in San Francisco. Vincent, thank you so much for being with us. People saying that there are opportunities here. You're going a step further and calling currencies in developing markets dirt cheap. Please explain.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been going on for a while, but last year really added to the case, especially if you look at Latin American currencies where, we had declines of like 20, 30% in some of the stateless currencies like the Chilean peso. If you're going to look at Asia, it strikes me as just insane that basically the Korean won or the Thai baht are basically where they were in 2000, just after the East Asian crisis, the internet bubble in the U.S. And if you look how far these countries have come since that time, it seems odd that on a real effective basis, their currencies have not appreciated in the past 20 years.
So, Vincent, in your most recent research note, you do a mea culpa here. You had a 2019 call of overweight EM, and that's not been the right call, as the EM has once again trailed kind of the S&P and broader markets. Why do you think emerging markets are, in fact, not getting rewarded, maybe just from a valuation perspective, if nothing else?
Right. Well, I think last year it really came down to two macro developments that the market had not anticipated. One was the escalation of the trade wars in the summer. I mean, if you look at the beginning of the year, it looked like the EM trade was going to work. And then as soon as we had the new round of summer tariffs, then everything kind of broke down. And then the second element was the wave of protests that we saw from, Santiago to Beirut to Baghdad to Cairo. So that's what really took down the EM trade down. As far as the valuation gap, I mean, it's been there for close to 10 years now, but it's getting to ridiculous proportions. I mean, one way to look at it that I like is to compare the valuation of the NASDAQ versus emerging markets, because I feel, we have two big growth narratives for the past 20 years. It's been either, internet software is going to eat the world, or the rising emerging market middle class. And right now that gap is about 40% bigger than it was at the height of the internet bubble. So I know people have said before, but at some point there will be some mean reversion in that ratio.
How much of this hinges entirely on the dollar? And I say this because people are expecting the dollar to weaken a bit next year. The dollar has been the hardest call to get right, and it really has driven a lot of what we've seen in developing markets, no?
Absolutely. I mean, this is indeed the crucial question when it comes to EM. I mean, the emerging market trade is a synthetic short dollar trade. And the reason is, I mean, part of it for commodity exporters, obviously, you have a very clear relation. The weaker the dollar, the more they get. But also, really, what makes it special this cycle is the amount of dollar debts that these emerging markets have contracted. 3.6 trillion as of the latest BIS data. And really, by the way, that is the one common theme about emerging markets. I mean, emerging market has been a misnomer for 20 years now. The only one thing markets like China, Malaysia, Turkey, or Argentina have in common is that they all borrow in dollars and they can't print it. So when the dollar weakens, their servicing costs get easier. They can ease monetary policy at home, and you see growth. When the dollar strengthens, as it has in much of the past 5 years, you have balance of payment crisis all over the board. So it is indeed a dollar short call.
So, Vincent, the trade deal between China and the U.S., it appears that we're making some progress on a phase one deal. We might even actually see something on paper one day. How critical is the trade deal, even if it's just a phase one or a light trade deal? How important is that for the psyche of emerging market investors?
I think psyche is the right word. Again, I mean, we've been, very close to a trade deal for a year. Talks are going well. You get these tweets every day for a year now. I have no insight as to what there is in that trade deal, or, even if the trade deal is going to be the same from the perspective of China as it will be from the U.S. But all that matters, I think, is just no more insanity. As long as we don't have, weird, out of the blue tweets, hey, I'm going to hike tariffs on, this country or whatever next year, which I think is unlikely because just of the electoral cycle, just a promise of stability. I mean, we don't need to solve IT. There's probably no solution there anyway, or state-owned enterprise. Just no more insanity, and there's some relief. The other thing to, think about is it's not just about the trade deal. I mean, if you look at the auto cycle in China, or, even cell phones, these things are bottoming on their own. So as long as we don't kind of, roil the market with unpredicted policies, things should get better.
I love it. Our headline for this segment is going to be emerging markets, or global macro strategist says no more insanity. Just stop the insanity and emerging markets can rally. I'm wondering, are there any developing market currencies that you do not like, that you think are going to underperform in 2020?
Developing market currencies?
Developing, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you still have generally the most vulnerable ones, right? I mean, are the ones that have a lot of high dollar debt, current account deficits. But again, so that would be the Argentine peso, the South African rand, to some extent maybe the Indonesian rupiah. But all these currencies have been so massacred, in the past 2 to 3 years that you got to wonder if, despite the vulnerabilities, they could actually be kind of the best on a bottoming process. The same is true, for example, with Chilean peso. Got down 30%. I'm sure people would, that's one of the ones that will come top of mind. But again, there's so much damage that has been done that even the weak emerging market currencies may actually do well next year.
Vincent Deluard, thank you so much for joining us. Vincent is a global macro strategist for INTL FC Stone, based in San Francisco. I like his note basically saying, all right, we were really wrong in 2019 with our overweight call on emerging markets, but we're sticking with it. And here are the reasons why. That takes some gumption, certainly.
And they're not alone. A lot of
Yes.
people had that call.
Yes.
A lot of people thought that the emerging market complex was historically undervalued and that it should rally. And we have seen rallies within there. And in 2020, the consensus is that it will do well. And really, to me, the issue is it has to do so much with the dollar. And ultimately, that hinges on these macro issues that are so hard to predict.
And I just, I agree with you. By his own admission, his call hinges on the dollar. And I just can't see a bear call for the dollar here. We've been, talking about it all year, but it's so tough to make a bear call because I'm just not sure what rallies materially against the dollar given what's going on in global economics. This is Bloomberg.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Whether you call yourself a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or something else, the road to 2020 is on TuneIn.
What a night! And a complete earthquake. This was
Follow every step of the Democratic primaries while hearing the latest headlines from the White House with live 24-hour news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and more.
We're closing in on the first results in the battle for the White House.
Experience the election through the sources you trust with the nonstop news channels on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, Greta Gerwig on bringing Louisa May Alcott's novel Little Women to the big screen.
Women have all kinds of practice imagining themselves as men, and men have very little practice imagining themselves as women.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
And a move, and a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
A toxic brew of slower revenue growth.
There is now this belief that Amazon maybe can do anything.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to be speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of Canaccord Genuity, talking about his outlook for the 2020 market. We're also going to be speaking with Max Neeson about Obamacare and a court ruling that does cast some question about the viability of the healthcare plan. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Why, thank you. Stocks are in record territory again. Investors are chasing gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations just this year. Government bonds are down around the world as a string of central banks kept their interest rates steady while it, raised its benchmark. Jean-Yves Fillon, BNP Paribas USA CEO, tells Bloomberg the main thing for markets in the global economy is U.S.-China trade.
Trade is going to be a driver of the global economy, and China will be no exception to it. I have to say that being pretty close, hopefully, to a U.S.-China discussion close to phase one, that might lift some of the uncertainties which have been impacting economic growth around the world.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.2% up 6. Dow's up 0.3% up 90, and the Nasdaq's up 0.3% up 28. The 10-year is down 4/30 seconds. The yield 1.93%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.3% at 61.20 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.1% at 14.8030 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.30. The euro's $1.1117. The British pound $1.3028. Boeing's been downgraded by S&P Global Ratings and Moody's Investors. Service is the grounding of the 737 MAX planes extends into next year, jeopardizing the company's financial future. Boeing, though, is up 1%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Markets are grinding higher today. Let's see where the action is with small and mid-cap stocks. We do that with Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at?
More grinding. Let's put it that way. The Russell 2000 index is up 0.1%, and the S&P 500 is up 0.2%. So smaller companies, not a whole lot of direction there either. That said, you really have a direction in Rite Aid, whose ticker is RAD. The drugstore chain has climbed almost 48%. That's the Russell's biggest gain. Earnings and sales for the fiscal third quarter beat analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Paratech Pharmaceuticals, ticker PRTK, has gained 27.5%. The drug maker signed a contract with the U.S. government for an anthrax treatment. Paratech will receive as much as $285 million. And New Age Beverages, ticker NBEV, has risen about 12.5%. Director Timothy Haas disclosed a purchase of 100,000 shares of the soft drink maker. That stock was bought on Monday. Now, the Russell's steepest decline belongs to Apogee Enterprises, ticker APOG. The maker of windows and other glass products has dropped almost 23%. Third quarter profit and revenue trailed estimates, and Chief Financial Officer James Porter is retiring. And Minerva Neurosciences, ticker NERV, has lost 17.5%. The drug developer's proposed treatment for depression and anxiety failed in a mid-stage study.
Dave Wilson, a Bloomberg Stocks editor who has erased all depression and anxiety from us today with his incredible holiday tie, which not only is a lovely shade of red with snowflakes on it, but also plays music.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, we'll ask you to play it. We would, but we have to talk about some other things. But
yes, you do. And the tie does go on for a while.
It goes on for a while. It's
Snippets
really quite
of three
impressive.
different songs, no less.
We'll have a full tie review special coming up late over the weekend, Anthony. Right now, let's head over to Justina Lee, a markets reporter for Bloomberg, who wrote a really interesting story, not hugely surprising, talking about the Wall Street analyst community and how it appears to be shrinking. Can you give us a sense of just how much it has contracted?
Right. I mean, according to the research firm Coalition Development, its ranks shrank just 8% this year to 3,500 across the 12 largest investment banks. But I mean, even before that, it's basically been falling every year since they started collecting the numbers in 2012.
Well, having been an analyst on Wall Street myself, I actually pinpoint the beginning of the decline of the sell-side equity research business to 2004. That's when Elliot Spitzer, then New York Attorney General, separated the investment banking revenues from research, and that took away approximately 50% of the revenue supporting research. So that was the beginning of the end. And then, one of the things that's really been big, Justina, that I saw in your article was MiFID II. Tell us what MiFID II is and how that is putting pressure on analyst ranks on Wall Street.
Right. So these were the European Union regulations that came into effect in early 2018. And essentially what it did was that it forced the buy side to pay for research and trading separately, when before that, research was essentially almost free marketing to induce trading flows. So because you now have to pay for research separately, asset managers started reevaluating just exactly how much research they needed. And this was also because the asset managers were starting to pay for research themselves rather than to use client money. And in the U.S., you don't have these regulations, but obviously that kind of prompted some soul searching across the U.S. asset managers because they don't want to have different practices across the Atlantic.
Paul Sweeney, you're basically the expert on this. And I got to say, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sentiment among analysts on Wall Street. I mean, are they finding jobs when they leave the big banks? What's it like?
Historically, they've gone to hedge funds, but as we know, the hedge fund business has been under pressure, fee pressure as well. So what a lot of analysts do when they leave, sometimes they go to the companies that they covered as investor relations officials there.
Not a great look, though.
No, but it's happened. It's always been the route. It's always been the route, but now it's just really picked up. But Justina, your article and your reporting is really great on this. What is the downside? I guess one of the downsides is if there's fewer analysts, I guess they're covering fewer companies, and that can't be good for investors.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because I think that's probably partly why the SEC seems to be reluctant to bring similar rules to the U.S. It's because what we've seen in Europe is that it looks like, the independent research providers are getting weaker and weaker. And also there's been a lot of concern. I mean, maybe some controversy whether this is actually happening. But there's definitely concern that the coverage of small and mid caps is shrinking. And if that happens, I mean, does that mean they're going to get less money from investors? Does that mean there's even going to be fewer IPOs? So definitely there are a lot of people who see sell-side research essentially almost serving a social function for the proper functioning of markets.
So one of the things that you outline really well in the story is just how much the buy-side community is reducing their budget for research. And I'm just wondering whether they're bringing it in-house or whether they're just going into index funds and not even doing any fundamental research.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a broader trend behind this is that, with money moving into passive products, I mean, you don't really need an analyst to tell you what stocks to buy when you're just buying all of the stocks. And I mean, at the big asset managers, we definitely see them kind of beefing up their internal research teams. So I guess the question is really what the smaller asset managers are going to do when they're facing this fee pressure and they don't necessarily have the resources to do all of the research themselves.
Justina Lee, thank you so much for your story. It's just really interesting about what's going on in the sell-side equity research business on Wall Street.
You live it.
I live it. I live it. Yep. And Justina Lee is a markets reporter for Bloomberg, joining us from London. And I'll put a plug in for Bloomberg Intelligence. Bloomberg LP, more than 10 years ago, saw this trend and said, what can we do for our Bloomberg terminal customers? And they said, we're going to build our own research department. So,
and you launched that.
I was part of the team that launched that 10 years ago. And now Bloomberg Intelligence has approximately 300 professionals around the world providing research on over 2,000 stocks and 130 industries, and really trying to help the Bloomberg customers and investors kind of fill that void that Wall Street is creating.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, though, that there is this sort of angst. what is the research worth when you actually have the MiFID rules that force a price tag onto it? And as you talked about in 2004, Elliot Spitzer forcing some sort of breakout.
Right.
And you know, it's clear there obviously is great worth, and the question is, how do you value that? And it's going to be something going forward. People
exactly right, and it's a put the whole industry into flux. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Amy Mars. Amy.
All right, thank you, Paul. President Trump, as you know, has been impeached. So the next step is for the Senate to hold a trial. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi won't name House managers who will prosecute in that Senate trial until they know what the Senate's process will be.
Because it's difficult to determine who the managers would be until we see the arena in which we will be participating.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer now saying Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is planning the, quote, most unfair impeachment trial in modern history by rushing the process and objecting to witnesses. Democrats are proposing that 4 of President Trump's aides testify for no more than 4 hours per witness. The fate of the Affordable Care Act was thrown back into limbo. A federal appeals court found a key piece of that original law was unconstitutional and kicked the case back to the judge who struck it down a year ago. The fight could still end up before the Supreme Court, but for now, the ruling leaves intact access to health care for millions of Americans who would face the loss of insurance coverage if that law is wiped out entirely. Democratic presidential candidates taking the stage tonight for the 6th debate of the nomination race. Even though this is the day after the president was impeached, it's not really clear that that is going to be top of mind for these candidates tonight. They'll likely be focusing on policies that are sharply dividing their party, including health care and taxes. There are 7 contenders who will participate in a 3-hour debate in Los Angeles. It all starts at 8 o'clock tonight, Wall Street time. You can listen in here on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
Event risk is taking center stage for traders.
Nathan Hager.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve.
And Karen Moscow.
It is the 5th major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Christmas, a time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
At Lidl, we're big on the most wonderful meal of the year, starring our award-winning deluxe British broadland free-range turkey from only $5.95 per kilo. Our whole range of fresh British turkeys in store from 19th of December. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always little on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2012, Black Lives Matter is born after the killing of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In 2015, the European refugee crisis sees an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering the EU after fleeing conflict regions like Syria. And in 2017, the Me Too movement inspires a new wave of social justice.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
It was 1970, and a pregnant Air Force captain found herself in a bind.
If you're pregnant, you cannot be active duty. If you have a child, you cannot be active duty.
So she sued. This week on The Media examines the case that almost set the course for women's reproductive rights. Instead, to Justice Ginsburg's dismay, we got Roe v. Wade. On this week's On The Media from WNYC. Listen to the On The Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are at or near record highs as U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says Washington and Beijing looks like they're going to sign that initial trade deal early next month. Traders also really don't seem to care about the impeachment of Donald Trump. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.25%, up 8. The Dow's up 0.3%, up 94. And the Nasdaq's up 0.3%, up 30. The 10-year is down 1/32 with a yield of 1.92%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.8% at 61.44 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1% at 14.80 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.29. The euro $1.11.18, and the British pound $1.30.12. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
You know, one of the industry sectors that just seems to be more and more in the news, maybe this year more than ever, has been cannabis. weed we're talking. Maybe that's because it's been, a pretty big business in Canada. We've got more and more U.S. states legalizing cannabis. To get the latest on that and on kind of all things in Canada, we welcome Dan Devio, President and CEO of Canaccord Genuity Group, based in Toronto, Canada, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Dan, thanks so much for coming down with us. So talk to us about the state of the cannabis business, because we've certainly heard more and more about it as we've gone through the year.
Yeah, no, and first of all, thanks very much for having me. And secondly, it's been a very active segment. Throughout the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen an incredible time where there was a massive rush to the market by, probably over 100 companies that went public, raising $4 to $5 billion. And, there was exuberance in the market. It's a new market. No one really knew how big it was going to be. And a lot of companies raised money. It's taken a little bit longer for people to realize on their strategic plans. Part of it's access to capital, part of it's government regulations taking a little bit longer. So we've seen some volatility in the market. We've seen some people lose money as a result, but people made a lot of money there for a while. Like I can remember this market 3 years ago where you couldn't convince somebody to invest in a cannabis stock. And the guys that we took out, we ended up having to pass the hat, around the firm just to fill out deals at the beginning.
Wait, did you actually ask your employees to buy into pot stocks?
The senior people really felt strongly about the industry at the beginning. And it wasn't about asking them. It was, they decided to do it. But certainly, some of our employees at the beginning invested in it and did well. The ones who invested lately didn't do so well. We've seen the big banks come into the market lately, and unfortunately that hasn't worked out as well. A little late to the sector, and some of the broadening of the distribution hasn't worked out well. Some of those deals haven't performed as well.
Paul, I love the idea of passing a hat around the office to say, what are we putting money in for? Pot.
Yeah, exactly. We call that in the business co-investing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will say this. It's interesting that you say that the big banks have tried to get in lately and it hasn't worked out. Is that good for you? Because that would have potentially been competition for you.
We have dominant market share. When I mean dominant, I mean we raise the majority of the money in the market and probably represent most of the M&A trade. So it's clearly competition you'd think would be bad, but the broadening out of the market would be a good thing. That market would be 5 times larger. So our market share would go from theoretically 100 to 20%. We'd still do very well as an institution because the market would be that much larger.
Well, talk to us in the U.S. I know. So Canada, is it federally legalized? Is that
correct?
Okay, and that's good. And in the U.S., we just have a limited number of states. What's the understanding about a possible federal legalization in the United States?
Yeah, well, the industry doesn't have the stigma that it used to have, clearly. So there's 3 pieces of federal legislation working their way through the government. There's the SAFE Act, States Act, and MORE Act, all 3 of them. And who knows exactly what will get passed and when. The point is, eventually, it's coming. Eventually, we're going to see it. So I'd like to make either a prediction or give a time frame. I don't like to do both. But eventually, we're going to see federal legislation in the industry, and that's going to help. From a state level, there's a number of state votes happening every year. This year, there's 4 states voting on adult legal use, recreational use. So that's going to continue to play out. We're going to continue to see states, legalize it at that level. But until we have federal legislation, you're not going to see companies be able to list on the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, and you're not going to see the big mutual funds and big money invest in the sector.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I know that Canaccord focuses a lot on a whole host of different functions within the financial services, whether it's the wealth management business or whether it is facilitating mergers and acquisitions. What are you expecting in 2020 in terms of corporate health and their willingness to complete transactions, given how high valuations are right now?
Yeah, well, I think high valuations does a lot of things. I mean, certainly companies are prepared to raise money when their values are high, and companies are prepared to buy and sell each other when their values are high. And there's pretty good access to capital still, both equity capital, but more importantly, credit capital. All those things direct you towards a pretty active market, both from a new issue perspective and an M&A perspective. So we see both markets continue to be active. We're busy in technology. It's a huge area of us. We bought a firm here called Petsky Prunier last year, and the share of our M&A business has gone up substantially. I think we're number 3 in that mid-market TMT area. And we continue to see that being very active in the U.S. We've got a great healthcare presence, both biotech and healthcare services, and that's been very active for us. So broadly speaking, we continue to be pretty optimistic. Tony Dwyer, our main market strategist, continues to see a very strong market over the next year. So we're pretty bullish on that industry.
Your stock's down 13% year to date. What's the story? What's going on?
More sellers than buyers.
Yep.
No.
And that's a wrap.
Yep.
Thank you. No, I mean it's unfortunate that our stock is down because our earnings have been incredibly strong. We've been increasingly profitable every year. Last year we did about 80 cents a share in earnings. This year to date we've done 41 cents a share in earnings. We trade at 6 to 7 times earnings. And given that most of our earnings come from our wealth business, I think people see us as a relatively volatile capital markets type stock. But the truth is 70% of our earnings last quarter came from our wealth business. And that's been a growing area of profitability. We've been able to attract a remarkable number of new advisory teams in our Canadian wealth business and in our UK wealth business, which is 45 billion Canadian dollars. It's a big business. We've bought a lot of firms and integrated them in, and our margins keep on going up. Our profitability goes up. We've also been buying back our stock because we see it's relatively cheap. We bought $40 million Canadian of stock last year, and we're going to continue that activity.
Dan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dan Davio, he is President and Chief Executive Officer of Canaccord Genuity Group Corporation with $44 billion of assets under management based in Toronto, Canada. But he joins us here in our interactive broker studios in New York City, where it is just about the same type of weather as they normally see in Canada, which is absolutely freezing. But really interesting to talk about the outlook for cannabis, given how much optimism there's been around that sector, although of late it's been rather beaten up. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Markets.
This is Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are higher in Thursday's session. Markets are seeming to ignore the historic impeachment of President Trump. Filings for unemployment benefits plunged last week by the most since February. Still, jobless claims missed forecasts for a larger drop. Claims fell by 18,000 to 234,000. The late Thanksgiving holiday this year may be responsible for some lingering seasonal adjustment issues. Darden restaurants falling after reporting quarterly sales at Olive Garden that trailed analysts' expectations. Comp sales rose 1.5% at the Italian-themed chain. And the chicken market is leaving a period of oversupply and low prices in the rear-view mirror, according to major supplier Sanderson Farms. Since November, poultry prices have been ticking up from record lows of the past 2 years, along with positive trade news for chicken out of China and a newfound poultry popularity in restaurants. 2020 is shaping up to be a winning year for American producers. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action. Look how he makes eye contact with his person. That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance will come in with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now, there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you interested?
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Batteries running low? Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent-Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Christmas is almost here, and at Asda, we've got your favourite spirits for just £16 each. That's £16 for a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff vodka or Gordon's gin, or a 70 centilitre bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland. Drink aware.
Ah, Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Be honest. How much attention are you really paying to this advert? 25%? Maybe 30% if you're sitting in traffic and the kids have stopped arguing? What about 0%? Well, now's the time to give 0% attention, because for a limited time only, the entire Mini range is available with 0% APR. All you need to decide is which Mini is perfect for you. Good to know we've now got 100% of your attention. Search 0% Mini to find out more. Who's in? Minimum 25% deposit on 24-month select agreements for new models registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating retailers, subject to availability. Excludes Mini Electric. UK residents aged 18+. Guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply if you return the vehicle. T's and C's apply. Mini UK, a trading name of BMW UK Limited, is a credit broker, not a lender.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hey, tune-in listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to speak a little health care with our good friend Max Neeson. It looks like Obamacare may be in jeopardy after a federal court struck down the Obamacare individual mandate. Plus, we're going to look at retail sales, holidays, buying season in full swing. We'll get a sense of how sales are actually going at the retail level. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, it's records, Paul. The S&P has pushed past 3,200 for the very first time, led by consumers and communication shares. The benchmark is up more than 7% in the fourth quarter, 27% so far this year. A fresh batch of data showed jobless claims fell, but not as much as forecast, doing little to alter views on the health of the economy. And markets seem to be ignoring the historic impeachment of President Donald Trump. Callum Pickering, Berenberg senior economist, tells Bloomberg that U.S.-China trade is the key to global economic health.
I think all we need for a rebound in global trade, in global industrial production, is for tensions not to escalate further, and we seem to be well on track with that. If we get a phase one deal, that is just a bonus into 2020. Trade uncertainty has been the one reason why global trade, global industrial production screeched to a halt this year and has tipped into recession into the second half of the year. It's purely a political bet. The global economy recovers if trade goes the right way.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.3% at 3201. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 0.5%, up 132, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 40. The 10-year is little changed with a yield of 1.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.6% at 61.30 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.2% at 14.8160 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.27. The euro $1.1121, and the British pound $1.3017. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, we want to focus on everything else going on in Washington, D.C., other than impeachment, which brings us to healthcare. Max Neeson joining us now in our Interactive Brokers studios. And the reason why we wanted to have you here is because we always love having you on. You cover biotech and pharma and healthcare over at Bloomberg Opinion, but it's because there was a court decision having to do with Obamacare that seemed to be potentially detrimental to the healthcare program. Can you talk a little bit about what the decision was?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a long-running case that made its way to the Fifth Circuit. And what they essentially decided was that the individual mandate, which is, from a prior court case, this is a decade of legal back and forth, was deemed a tax. Then Congress zeroed out the tax. So because it's zeroed out, it can no longer be seen as a tax. Therefore, it's once again unconstitutional. But they punted essentially on the more important part of the case because the individual mandate is zeroed out. It doesn't really matter that it's unconstitutional. What matters is whether that means that the rest of the law or parts of the rest of the law have to go with it. And instead of making some kind of decision on that, they kicked it back down to the lower court, a judge who already ruled that he thought the whole law was unconstitutional. They just thought he wasn't careful enough or didn't look at the details enough to make that decision, although he probably will end up making the same decision. He's a pretty conservative guy.
So what are next steps here? Because I'm just thinking about the election coming up, and boy, it's once again, healthcare is going to be a hot button issue for the candidates. How's the timing of this going to play into it, do you think?
Yeah, so it mostly depends on what the Supreme Court decides to do. They could wait until we get another decision from that lower court judge, and then then it might be appealed up to them. I believe that Democrats are going to try and take it directly to the Supreme Court. In the hope of a faster resolution and putting this front and center in the election, because it is probably not a court case that at this point is of benefit to the Trump administration, even though it's his Justice Department that continues to push it, because we saw in the midterm elections portions of the law that could be struck down by this case, protections for people with pre-existing conditions, staying on your parents' insurance until 26, stuff like that could go with it, and that's become wildly popular. So if this lawsuit does strike the law down in its entirety, it would create a big mess for the election and the healthcare system at large.
I'm wondering, we've been talking for years now about uncertainty around Obamacare. What's the practical implication of having this sort of overhang of a cloud on the healthcare program, given the fact that insurance companies and healthcare providers have to have, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year outlooks for their financial plans?
Yeah, I mean, it's created, there's been a whole series of messes. If you go back all the way to the early years of the law, the fact that the Medicaid expansion wouldn't be universally implemented, throwing out certain categories of subsidies for insurers, all along, and then losing the individual mandate, all along, this has sort of made it harder to price plans, to profitably participate in the market. And that's created a lot of disruption and made insurance on the individual market pretty unaffordable for people that don't qualify for subsidies. The fact that they're income-linked subsidies, that's kept the market stable enough to survive, but enrollment is way down from what was initially forecasted, and it's down again this year. It persists, but not in the form that the people who authored the law would have hoped.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go. It just seems like, as Lisa mentioned, it's since Obamacare has been passed, seems like it's the opposition forces and now the Republicans over the last 3 years have been chipping away at the Affordable Care Act. Is there a sense of how much is even left of the original plan?
Yeah, it is not what was originally envisioned. There are still, more than 20 million people that are covered for the first time that have insurance that might otherwise not, because of the individual market and because of the Medicaid expansion, and then a variety of other, changes throughout the healthcare system. Still enormously impactful and beneficial, but at the same time, it's not what it might have been. Or on the other, you might say it's not what it could be, with a few tweaks to some loopholes and errors that I'm sure the drafters would like to get back. or if you boost the subsidies a little bit, you could get that coverage number a lot higher and make that coverage a lot more useful. But that will take a very different Congress than the one we have right now.
So just real quickly, Max, 20 million people covered that wouldn't be covered. What's the bad part of that? I mean, what's the opposition saying about that? It's just too expensive?
Well, the argument is that by forcing insurance to cover, make women pay, make insurers give the same price to women as men, that's basically cuts at freedom and kills the market.
All right.
I'm articulating it from a certain angle because I think the arguments are bad.
Right.
but more or less, it's they've made the market less functional by adding these regulations.
Max Neeson, biotech, pharma, and healthcare columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Every time you walk in here, I think I'm going to get smarter, but it just reminds me this healthcare thing is brutally complex. Max, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. It's something that you constantly have to pay attention to because it is constantly changing. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C., where Amy Morris. Give us some thoughts, Amy.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And on this day, after the House of Representatives impeached President Trump, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is planning the most unfair impeachment trial in modern history by rushing the process and objecting to witnesses. Now, McConnell and President Trump are blasting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for a possible impeachment delay. Democrats are proposing that 4 of President Trump's aides testify for no more than 4 hours per witness. We are watching this for you. House of Representatives, meanwhile, took a hiatus from polarization, debating approval of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more from Capitol Hill.
Majority Leader Steny Hoyer took credit for modifying the original agreement.
I'm glad that our House Democratic Working Group was able to secure new provisions to ensure that America's trading partners uphold the rights of workers to unionize and bargain collectively.
Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
In sharp contrast to yesterday, today is the first time this chamber can finally rally behind an overwhelming, bipartisan legislative win since the beginning of this Congress.
Both parties are looking to prove to voters that they have legislative achievements, that impeachment was not the be-all and end-all. On Capitol Hill, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
And a Republican group has launched a new ad that targets Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. The Hill reports the new Republicans for the Rule of Law ad quotes Graham pushing the Senate to allow witness testimony during the impeachment of former President Bill Clinton. Graham has said that he would reject any attempts to call witnesses during President Trump's Senate trial. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Ah, Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties this season to be jolly. With our deluxe king prawn selection for only $3.29. And our deluxe mature cheddar soufflets, also just $3.29. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
Forget the cheese basket and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription at TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free news, and nonstop music. TuneIn Premium brings the best of audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So, forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to start your free trial. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project, a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently.
Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words.
Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
As we wave goodbye to the 2010s, TuneIn is remembering some of the decade's biggest news stories.
In 2011, the Arab Spring sparks anti-government protests across the Middle East and Northern Africa. In 2016, the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union, forcing the ongoing Brexit crisis. And in 2019, Hong Kong erupts in 6 months of pro-democracy protest against mainland China.
Search news on TuneIn to be there when the next big story breaks.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are moving higher into record territory following encouraging profit reports from some big companies. And investors don't seem to be too concerned about the Trump impeachment situation. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.3%, up 9. The Dow's up 0.4%, up 112, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 40. 10 years up 230 seconds. The yield is 1.90%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.8% at 61.41 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.25% at 14.8210 per ounce. The dollar yen 109.23, the euro $1.1128, and the British pound $1.3039. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Adipar. Adipar's portfolio reporting and insights platform is trusted by thousands of wealth advisors from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions. Learn more at addepar.com. Well, we are right smack in the middle of the holiday shopping season to get an update on what's going on out there in the world of retail. We welcome back our good friend Seema Shah. She is Director of Consumer and Retail Trends at Credit Intel, formerly of Bloomberg Intelligence. She joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. Seema, thanks so much for joining us again. We always love having you talking retail. How is the holiday selling season going? It seems like the consumer's in pretty good shape, so are retail sales kind of following suit?
No, they're not. So I don't know if you saw November retail sales missed by 30 basis points. There was, even though that included Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Small Business Saturday, and they were still missed. I know a lot of holidays very compressed this year.
Yeah.
It's only like 26 days versus 32 last year. So Christmas is literally in 6 days from now. And with the fact that you had Prime Day in the summer and you basically have promotions all year round, there's a lot less urgency. So, and there's still that shift to online. So the consumer is still spending where they want to, but they want a deal. And, it's a little cramped, though, for them in terms of spending.
One thing that's hard to gauge, given the dynamic right now in retail, is how much of the weakness that we're seeing in select retailers is their lack of adapting to the modern era, and how much is due to a consumer that just really isn't capable or willing to spend the way that they used to. So do you have a sense of what it is?
So I think a lot of it from sort of some of the players, it is that they were slow to change. They sort of got taken over by mass, who expanded to that category. So you see the department stores, you see someone like a Bed Bath. But now you see, like for Bed Bath, for example, they have a new CEO. He's basically cleaned house. He's going to add a new management team. He's known. He came from Target, from adding private label and omni-channel. So I think if you see somebody doing that, or you see like the return of a retailer like Best Buy, it's possible. But if you're too slow and you don't do it, that's when you miss the opportunity. So I think a lot of it is that. But I also think that people just really want a deal. And when you have things like tariffs, even if there's the threat of tariffs or rising cost or wages, that puts pressure on the retailer because people are like, I'm not going to buy it until I get 50% off. So,
Seema, I know the folks at Credit Intel, you guys look at kind of the financial health, the credit health across the retail ecosystem. We know the retailers, particularly some of them, I guess, department stores, continue to struggle. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel? What are you kind of telling your clients?
It really depends on a sector by sector basis. We just mentioned Best Buy doing very, very well. Had a great quarter, probably are going to have a good holiday. But then you also have somebody like an L Brands who Victoria's Secrets is really struggling. They're almost all in the mall. They're losing share to Aerie. So how do they revive that business without losing the momentum they have in Bath and Body Works? So it's definitely a hit or miss. They're definitely, but in like home furnishings, for example, At Home is someone I'd keep an eye out from a risk perspective, right? They slowed their store growth. They have to suddenly invest in omni-channel, so I don't see any margin improvement in the near future. So these are things that we sort of look at and see, like, what's the prospect for them in terms of cash flow.
And given the fact that you are focused on the debt side, perhaps more than just EPS or other sort of top-line growth areas, I'm wondering, what do you think the prospects are of an ongoing retail apocalypse or ongoing kind of washout that we've seen? I mean, are we going to continue to see that, or is this pretty much...
In terms of store closures, I don't know that you'll see it as much as you do, but it'll continue to probably be people optimizing their fleets as leases come up or move to better locations, or trying to figure out how they can improve the productivity of the box. Because 85% of retail is still in the store. It's still important, but you have to make it appealing. It has to be a nice experience. And if you want to do things like buy online, pick up in store, which helps the retailer's margin and people like that service, you have to be prepared and have the associates trained to do so. If you go in there and nobody knows what you're talking about, you're not going to do it again. So these are things I think people have to do.
So, Seema, I think in past conversations, we've talked about the number of stores in America and how America is still over-stored. What are you guys saying to your clients now, or what are you hearing from some of your clients about how much more do we have to go in terms of kind of reducing the footprint of retail America?
I think some of the legacy retailers that were closing stores, the Sears of the world, JCPenney had closed stores, some of those locations were not optimal as people changed and habits changed. But I think a lot of retail, it's just a matter of some people overexpanded, but that box might still be good for, let's say, a smaller, maybe non-public retailer. So I think, there's still lots of room for stores. It just has to be in the right location. And part of our analysis to show like how close you are to your competitors, is it going to be worth your while to open a store here? And I think a lot of it was just opening stores without really thinking about it strategically.
So everyone wants a deal. So why don't these stores just mark things up twice as much and then say it's going to be 60% off?
In order for all of them to do that, I guess they would have to collude, which is illegal. But
no, but I mean, in all seriousness, are stores trying to get away from sort of training consumers?
Some brands are, yeah. As many as possible, they are. They're trying to pull back, but the immediate effect is that you see a negative impact
with
on
Gap,
your sales.
for example.
Gap, for example, and that's also the ones that are in the middle tier. RH completely pulled back, but they're high-end luxury, so they can pass through the price, and you're really like, it doesn't really matter. But for the middle tier, and if you don't have a unique product and you can do like-for-like comparison, then it's very hard to do that. And that's where you see the problem.
So, Sam, I'm just looking at one of the recent reports from your firm, and looking at the Thanksgiving period, Black Friday. Online sales, some people are putting up some good numbers. It's not just Amazon. I mean, Walmart up 50%, Nordstrom up 60%. So can we say that the traditional retailers have finally figured out how to compete against Amazon?
The larger ones have, and I think that the mass is probably the best example. A specialty maybe Best Buy, Williams-Sonoma's over 50%, but they have really figured out how to appeal to the customer wherever they want to shop, make it easy for them to fulfill their goods, in the store, on the way home. We'll sell, whatever you want to do, they make it as easy as possible, but they also have the scale to do that. And a lot of the smaller retailers you have a lot of capital to invest in this logistics, and so I think there are ways to do it, and there are ways to be competitive, but you really have to step up that investment.
Have you finished your holiday shopping?
I have, for the most part.
I imagine that most people probably who are organized, like I know you are. I know personally just how organized Siva is.
We still have 6 days. What's the problem?
That's when you want buy online, pick up in store, or same day delivery. These are all things that they're doing to make the consumer, hey, like you have basically up until Christmas Eve.
Right, except that
you can get it.
Yeah, except that you're organized enough to do that. Seema Shah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was nice to be back.
Seema Shah is Director of Consumer and Retail Trends at Credit Intel, based in New York, talking about the retail landscape. It's kind of an interesting shift that we've seen going on. People talk about the retail apocalypse, but it's more like the retail kind of, morphologist or something. I mean, it's just changing.
I mean, it's what Seema's talked about is the omni-channel experience. I mean, if you can get that right, like some of the big mass merchants, then you can compete. But if you're not, maybe some of these smaller companies who can't invest in the technology needed, that could be the big challenge.
Yeah, indeed. Right now, we're looking at markets that are materially higher than they were at the open, with the Nasdaq up at record highs again, up 0.5% today. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local...
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
At Lidl, we're big on the most wonderful meal of the year, starring our award-winning deluxe British broadland free-range turkey from only $5.95 per kilo. Our whole range of fresh British turkeys in store from 19th of December. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
Hey, tune in listeners. Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. 11-2. Today, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Anna Edgerton from Washington on what comes next in impeachment. From Los Angeles, Kevin Cirilli for a preview of tonight's Democratic presidential debate. And Therese Raphael from London on Prime Minister Johnson's Brexit plan. So, Anna, let's start with you first. What comes next on impeachment? Because I thought I knew, but I'm not sure I do now.
That's a pretty common sentiment in Washington right now. So the next step will be for the House to send the impeachment articles over to the Senate, for the Senate to start the trial of whether or not to remove Trump from office. Now, there's been a little bit of confusion between about 9 p.m. last night and right now to see whether or not the House would delay those articles in order to have some kind of leverage on what the Senate trial looks like. We just heard from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and she tried to kind of clarify that by saying it's more of a procedural question. They're not trying to seek any kind of political influence on the process in the Senate.
So why didn't you bring it up at all? Because I guess off script last night she said, you know what, we don't have to send over the articles right away. And there is this pressure they're trying to bring to bear on Mitch McConnell and the Republicans to have more than just a pro forma trial.
That's right. And this is an idea that has been floated by people outside of Congress, people not on Capitol Hill, saying that this is how Democrats could insist on getting witnesses like John Bolton, like Mick Mulvaney, like Mike Pompeo from the Trump administration. But it's kind of become a bit more of, I think, a political confusion than Pelosi intended for it to be. She was asked about this in a press conference last night, right after the impeachment vote. And she kind of had this unscripted moment where she said she wasn't happy with the Senate trial. But even her top deputies were kind of surprised by that and kind of admitted behind the scenes that that wasn't really their first plan A.
Okay, thank you so much to Anna Edgerton reporting from Washington. Now we're going to Los Angeles, where our chief Washington correspondent actually is in Los Angeles because there's a big debate tonight. What are we expecting, Kevin?
A massive debate. 7 Democratic presidential candidates going to be on that stage at Loyola Marymount University. The top-tier candidates, the dynamics, David, haven't significantly changed. Former Vice President Joe Biden still leading polls nationally, but dipping in polls in Iowa and New Hampshire. He will try to draw a contrast between Senator Bernie Sanders, who maintains a solidified base of support that hasn't gone up or down throughout this primary season. Meanwhile, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts, has seen her poll numbers significantly take a hit, even as she's tried to sharpen the political knife, so to speak, and draw a sharper contrast with South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Look for Senator Warren to not only draw contrast tonight, I'm told, with Pete Buttigieg, but also with Senator Bernie Sanders. Some other candidates on that stage that are poised to have a breakout moment. Senator Amy Klobuchar, remember, she, along with Senator Sanders and Warren, will be participating in that Senate impeachment trial. She had a breakout moment during the Kavanaugh hearing, and she's been the buzz of the wonk world over the past week or so as voters in Iowa reportedly have given her a second look. Andrew Yang is still in there, solidifying his base, solidifying his fundraising numbers, as is Tom Steyer. Someone who will not be on the stage, but who will be running a television ad, is Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, who is still very much trying to get back on that debate stage.
Kevin Cerulli, thank you so much. We'll be listening to your coverage out there in Los Angeles of that Democratic debate.
Yeah.
And now that's going to be on Bloomberg Radio coming up this evening. And now we want to turn over to London. Therese Raphael is over in London. And we had Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, come on and talk about Brexit. And I want us to really focus on two dates. One is January 31, 2020, and the other is December 31. What do we know?
Well, we had the Queen's speech today in which the government lays out its legislative agenda, and quite quickly after that, Boris Johnson began the process of getting his deal through Parliament, which should happen in quite short order. So the January 31st deadline looks very secure. After that, though, it's a little dicier. Johnson wants to get a trade deal with the EU done by the end of 2020. He could have asked for another year or 2 years to negotiate. He's choosing not to. He wants to get Brexit out of the headlines. He wants people to see it as done. That comes at a cost, though, because it means that he's not going to get to discuss and negotiate all the issues that Britain would like to get on the table in those talks. They'll have to accept a bare bones deal, and it gives the EU an upper hand in the negotiations.
So, Therese, as you suggest, there is a long list of items to be addressed in terms of the relationship between the United Kingdom and Europe going forward. There are a lot of trade agreements there to enter into. Do they really have the people to get that done in 11 months? Are they negotiating them now?
Well, they have been hiring people in trade negotiations and in the civil service for quite a while. So they've been sort of gearing up toward that. That said, I mean, there's a huge asymmetry between where the UK is in terms of negotiating a major trade deal in the European Union, which is, one of the biggest trade blocs in the world. The EU will be looking to sequence the talks in a way that advantages its interests. So it may agree to say zero tariffs and quotas on goods, but in exchange for maintaining quotas on fishing in UK waters, and all of that is before even services get discussed. And obviously, the UK financial services sector is massive. It's important, but services broadly in the UK economy are dominant and a big part of UK exports. It's very unlikely they'll get to any serious discussion of services in the timetable that Johnson set out.
Yeah, it's an awfully busy 2020 and maybe going beyond. Thank you so much, Therese Raphael, reporting from London. And now it's time to get a check on how the market's reacting to today's top stories. Joining us now is Kaylee Line. So it looks like they're doing all right in the equity market.
Doing all right. I mean, we snapped a 5-day winning streak yesterday, but today it is right back to the up and up with the S&P 500 at yet another record high. Now, granted, this week we've really been seeing some tight trading ranges. We've been looking at a different trading range of about 10 points in the past 3 days. Today we are a little bit more meaningfully higher, and I think you're just seeing a market in which there's no major upside catalyst, so we're not seeing huge moves to the upside, but there's also not a lot of downside surprises coming into the market, so it's just kind of steady as it goes, and that bullish sentiment just doesn't seem to be getting meaningfully dented.
It may be more interesting on the bond side, actually, right, because it seems like the world is getting used to the idea that maybe the central banks aren't going to keep cutting, and as a result, we see that yield curve really steepening for the 10-year.
You're seeing it steepen. The 10-year yield, 2% looks in sight yet again, which is something we haven't seen in quite some time, and the 2s10s, that is now at the widest since fall of 2018. We're looking at about 30 basis points on that spread, which is something we haven't seen in quite a while, and of course, a lot of that just speaks to the risk appetite in this market.
Okay, this is Balance of Power, so we have to ask you the impeachment question, given what happened yesterday. How do markets react to impeachment? How have they reacted in the past?
Seems like they really couldn't care less, to be honest with you. Of course, this is only the third impeachment we've seen in history, but when we look at history as a guide at the Nixon and Clinton impeachment proceedings, under Nixon, those proceedings, the S&P 500 13%. Under Clinton, it rose 28%. Now, obviously, very different reactions. The difference is that the Nixon proceedings were in the post-Vietnam War recession, and Clinton was at the height of the dot-com bubble. So I think what that tells you is that the economics matter a lot more to the market than politics, and that's probably, frankly, what we're seeing this year.
Yeah, there were bigger forces at play, no doubt. Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much to Kayla Lance for that report on the markets. We're going to turn now to Mark Crumpton because he is here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell calls the impeachment of President Trump unfair. Speaking on the Senate floor today, he said the move was a, quote, partisan crusade. He added Democrats had no evidence against the president.
They impeach a president whom they do not even allege has committed an actual crime known to our laws. They've impeached simply because they disagree with a presidential act.
Leader McConnell also accused House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of being afraid to send, quote, their shoddy work product to the Senate. Speaker Pelosi hasn't said when she will send the 2 impeachment articles to the Senate for trial. 7 Democratic presidential contenders will take the debate stage tonight as they try to convince voters they are the party's best hope to deny President Trump a second term. As our Kevin Cirilli told us moments ago, the debate's being held in California, the biggest prize in the primary season. The race in California has largely mirrored national trends, with former Vice President Joe Biden, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren clustered at the top of the field. They're followed by South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, and businessman Andrew Yang and billionaire philanthropist Tom Steyer. In India, the government is barring protests over that new religion-based immigration law. Still, thousands defied the ban today to express their anger. There now have been 8 straight days of unrest. The law bars undocumented Muslims from neighboring Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan from seeking citizenship, but it allows migrants from other religions to do so. Sudan is marking the first anniversary of mass protests that led to the ouster of former president and longtime autocrat Omar al-Bashir. The anniversary drew crowds to the streets across the country. Sudan is under heavy international and regional pressure to reform. The new government wants to get Sudan removed from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism so that it can attract badly needed foreign aid. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, President Trump is now officially impeached. But will that hurt him or help him in an election year? We ask our political panel next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
The holidays arrive, and with it, the familiar patterns of the season. Ritual cheer, the holiday herds,
San Francisco has been canceled.
and migratory flights. But this season, a more thrilling alternative is calling. Defy the laws of human nature at the Season of Audi sales event.
Visit your tri-state Audi dealer during the Season of Audi sales event and get behind the wheel of the Audi you've always wanted. Go to AudiOffers.com for more details.
So guys, how many of you are guilty of using your wife or your girlfriend's shampoo in the shower? Quite a few, I imagine. Have you considered the importance of using a product designed for your hair? Yes, men's hair. After all, your hair is different. Dove Men Plus Care has created a hair care range designed to fortify men's hair and give it the care it needs to stay strong and healthy. Do your family and your hair a favor and get your own products. Dove Men Plus Care for stronger, more resilient hair. Available at Walmart.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing, all at records. Stocks moving higher as investors chase gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. Government bonds fell around the world as a string of central banks kept their interest rates steady, while one raised its benchmark. S&P 500 index over 3,200 for the first time, led by consumer and communication shares. The benchmark up more than 7% in the fourth quarter, 27% so far this year. S&P up 10 at 3202, up 0.3% today. The Dow up 106 higher by 0.4%. Nasdaq's up 46. That's a gain of 0.5%. 10-year up 3/32, yield 1.90%. We've got gold up 0.2%, $14.78 the ounce. Recapping stocks at a record. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
On this vote, the yeas are 230, the nays are 197, present is 1. Article 1 is adopted.
This lawless partisan impeachment is a political suicide march
for the Democrat Party. Have you seen my polls in the last 4 weeks?
That was the split screen last night. For only the third time in U.S. history, the House voted to adopt articles of impeachment against the President of the United States, while President Trump left Washington to field a campaign rally in Michigan, a state essential to his re-election effort. To take us through the political implications of what we've just witnessed, welcome now our political panel of Jeannie Zaino, political science professor at Iona College here in New York, and Brendan Buck. He's former top advisor to Speaker Paul Ryan. He's joining us today from Washington. So, Jeannie, I'm going to put it on you first of all. It was thought that maybe impeaching a president would really hurt the president politically. It's not clear right now that it is hurting him, particularly in some key states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, it's done remarkably little to change his poll numbers. And in fact, in some of the polls, he's ticked up a little bit from where he was a few months ago. That said, it is very difficult to make the argument that impeaching the president is going to help him by any stretch of the imagination. So, is it going to hurt him? We don't know yet, but it's certainly not going to help him, except, and I say this is a big exception, it has done things like brought both the Democrats and the White House to the table on USMCA and some other things that I don't think we would have seen happen if it hadn't been for the impeachment. So they've been able to move forward on some things that otherwise they may not have.
Brendan, could we expect this to cut either way come November? November's a long time from now, right now, in political terms.
Sure, we don't know, what the situation will look like a year from now. But, being impeached is never a good thing. Absolutely, let's be clear about that. But this could not actually have gone any better for him if you look at it politically. Yes, he did get a trade agreement done that I don't think would have happened had this not happened. And this entire thing has played into his entire narrative that I am the victim, that establishment forces in Washington are out to get me, and therefore, by extension, out to get you, the voter. And so this message plays perfectly for him. He gets to play victim. He gets to be the center of attention. And at the end of the day, he gets to say that I was acquitted in the Senate and I'm victorious at the end of it. So I don't really know what Democrats have gained. I know that the president has gained something. And the reason that Democrats are a little concerned about this is the way that Nancy Pelosi is bringing along this trade agreement at the exact same time. It is not a coincidence that they are doing this the same week as articles of impeachment, because she needs to tell those moderate, vulnerable Democrats, here's something you can go home and talk about other than impeachment.
So Brendan, it doesn't appear to be hurting the president yet. It may never hurt the president. But what does it do for the country? What does it do for future presidents? I really wonder, do the Republicans want to be in a position of sending a message to future presidents that it's okay to call up a foreign government and try to get an investigation of your political appointment? Is that something we want to do as a country?
No, I don't disagree with you at all. And I think one of the things that I'm personally concerned about is, impeachment is supposed to be the strongest tool that we have to hold the president accountable. And if this process ends up sort of cheapening that tool and making it look like it's not actually a threat to him, what are the guardrails that are left? And I guess the guardrails that are left are public opinion. And, a president is still going to do what is in their best political interest. The problem here is that, as we've talked about, this hasn't really hurt him with public opinion. And for all this drama, the craziest thing about this is we are basically right back where we started politically. So I don't know, what the future holds for this, but I think the only real guardrail left are the American people.
So I want to ask you, Jeannie, what is the best strategy for the Democrats right now? Tulsi Gabbard, the Democrat, actually abstained. She didn't vote for or against yesterday, saying, I can't condone what happened. It was wrong, so I can't vote against it. At the same time, I don't think it's impeachable. Is there some other course that the Democrats might pursue to register, at least, we don't want our presidents doing things like this, but stop short of what will not happen, which is convicting a victim for office?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard also was asked for a censure, which obviously she could not get and they could not get. And you had several Democrats actually a few days ago calling for a censure for that very reason. And I think we have to be clear. What we saw on the floor yesterday was Democrats in many cases making a very difficult decision to put their conscience and their support for the Constitution above their electoral prospects. Because as was just mentioned, this could really end up getting some of them in really hot water in their districts. People like Slotnick, who had to make a really tough decision, and she's facing a lot of heat at home. So they put their conscience over their electoral prospects. And, I think the question here is, will voters reward that in the end? And again, we don't know. Or will they say that, you know what, we're going to throw you out because we don't like what you did?
Brendan, which brings us back to that debate tonight out in Los Angeles. And is it the best strategy, frankly, for the Democratic candidates for president just not to mention it at all? Is it going to be a major factor in the debate? Or are the Democrats eager to go on to something else?
It hasn't been a focus of any of the debates thus far, and for one simple reason, that they're all on the same page. A debate is supposed to be an opportunity to differentiate yourself from your opponents. They're all on the same page here. They're all for impeachment, so I don't imagine they're going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But beyond that, another striking thing about this, which talks about the politics of it in general, is that even out on the campaign trail, you don't see the Democrat candidates talking about this. They want to talk about issues that are more tangible to people's lives: healthcare, jobs, drug prices, whatever it may be. And I think that's a sign that they know that this is not really an animating issue for average voters. And if they want to take advantage of the situation that they're on the debate stage, they need to talk about other things.
Well, and the fact that it's not animating, Jeannie, is the fact that the country's split right down the middle. So if the Democrats are going to have a chance come November, they got to get to other things.
They have to get to other things. This has been a hyper-partisan exercise, of course. And what Democrats need to focus on in that debate tonight is things people are talking about. That is healthcare, that is jobs, that is education, that is guns. Those are the issues that got them elected in 2018. They cannot forget that, and they haven't. I would say all of these candidates on the campaign trail have been very clear. They're focused on what voters care about and will vote on in 10 months, when impeachment may seem like a distant memory.
Okay. Thanks very much to our political panel. Jeannie Zaino here in New York and Brendan Buck down in Washington, D.C. Still ahead here, the new year brings a revolution in global shipping with new rules on fuel. It's not our stock of the hour, it's our commodity of the hour. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, get up to 50% off showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. Selected ranges excluded. See wix.co.uk.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr. An Ohio judge awarded $830,000 to a woman who claimed former boxing champion Adrian the Problem Bronner sexually assaulted her at a Cleveland nightclub. The default judgment was delivered after Bronner failed to defend himself in the lawsuit. There will be 5 new Olympic sports at the Summer Games next year in Tokyo: baseball, softball, karate, skateboarding, sport climbing, and surfing. In speed climbing, 2 tethered athletes race up a 15-meter wall as quickly as they can.
Panther Brands and Panther Racing couldn't show that the U.S. Army National Guard breached a sponsorship contract under which the plaintiffs managed an IndyCar race team branded with the Guard's marks. According to the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, the plaintiffs failed to show entitlement to nearly $5 million in damages, and that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. January 1st doesn't just ring in the new year. It also brings a big change to the shipping industry worldwide as new regulations from the International Maritime Organization go into effect, requiring ships to use fuel with less sulfur, raising issues for shippers, for refiners, and maybe even for potential consumers. We welcome now our resident expert in all things oil. She is Alex Steele. She's the anchor of Daybreak Americas and, of course, of Commodities Edge. Welcome, Alex. Good to have you here.
David.
Okay, so January 1's the day. I wake up January 2. How's my life different? How's the world different?
I don't know if that day you're going to see a lot of difference because the commodity market's going to move ahead of the actual implementation. So we're already seeing the dislocations within the oil market and the product market today. But for the first 6 months, this implementation is quite a big deal. It costs the tankers basically have a couple options. They put millions and millions of dollars into a scrubber. You take nasty fuel, you turn it into nice, pretty fuel, or you have to start buying this lighter quality fuel. And the question is, will there be enough? Is it where you need it to be? Will it be too expensive?
So you talk about dislocations. Mm-hmm. What do those mean? Is that it's paying more money? Is that waiting longer for stuff? Is there the buildups at ports so people can't get their fuel?
All of those things. So basically, if you're a tanker and I'm going from U.S. to Asia, for example, and I have to have this light sulfur fuel, when I get to Asia, I have to actually then have the light sulfur fuel in Asia to refuel my ship to then go back to the U.S. So there needs to be the right kind of product in the right kind of port in order to do that. You also need tankers that can take on that kind of supply. Also, they need to move really fast to get things places. You might move slower if you don't have the fuel. You want to burn a little less. You might see short haul tanker ships instead of the longer ones. You might have like 5 days rather than 20 days for shipping, for example. And it's going to take a little bit for the industry to sort itself out.
So as I understand, there's a standard of how much sulfur could be there, but there's not a standard about how you fix it. There are different ways of fixing it, different kinds of fuel. You said there could be scrubbers and things like that. It's not like unleaded fuel. There's just one unleaded fuel. You have to use it.
Right.
So is that going to exacerbate the situation where are we better off to have like, here's the fuel, it works?
Well, yes and no, because the problem is if you need the fuel, like, okay, this is the fuel, guys, take it or leave it. You need all the refiners to be able to make that exact fuel. That doesn't happen. So there's some refiners that are really complex that can take lots of different oil and refine it into these products. There are other refiners that can't do that. They need just this oil that you have over here, or other refiners that can do a little bit but not a lot. So you have to have a complete organization of the refiners and the products to make that happen, and that's just not the case.
So who enforces this IMO regulation? I mean, who actually goes to you and says you have to do that, I'm going to charge you?
So the countries. So basically all the countries are responsible for their own area and the port, and you get fined. Like if you're not in compliance, you're going to get fined. Whether or not that fine is going to happen January 2nd or maybe in March or maybe in April remains to be seen. But there's real money behind it, so you actually have to fix it. Also, one of the solutions to fix it is an open loop scrubber, but the issue is you can also put some sludge into the sea and the ocean because of that. So some ports are now banning that tanker. So it leaves a lot of question marks in the shipping industry, a lot of costs, a lot of difficulty getting supply, and that will trickle through to us in some capacity on our product side.
Alex,
if we buy a banana.
Oh, you buy a banana, okay. Always great to have Alex Steele with us talking about bananas. And you can see much more of Alex right after Balance of Power on her program, Commodities Edge. That's going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. Up next, Senator Mike Braun of Indiana is at the center of 3 big votes on Capitol Hill: appropriations package, USMCA, and the upcoming impeachment trial of President Trump. He's going to join us next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. U.S. stocks are higher, edging toward fresh records as investors shrug off the historic impeachment of President Trump. The Dow is up 104 points to 28,342. S&P 500 up 10 points. The Nasdaq climbing 46. Rite Aid shares are climbing over 45% after the drugstore chain posted a quarterly profit. In economic news, applications for jobless benefits fell by 18,000 last week to 234,000. That's close to the lowest level in half a century. In other news, half of the people with jobs did not get a pay raise in the past year. As for the rest, Bankrate.com says it surveyed found 28% did get a raise, 12% got a better paying job, and 10% got both a raise and a better paying job. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
Make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, now that President Trump has been impeached by the House, the Senate must decide the timing and structure of the trial to be held early next year. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that there's precedent for her decision to delay announcing her list of House impeachment managers.
The next thing for us will be when we see the process that is set forth in the Senate. Then we'll know the number of managers that we may have to go forward and who we would choose.
Responding to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's comments slamming the impeachment, Speaker Pelosi said the nation's founders didn't expect to, quote, have a rogue president and a rogue leader of the Senate at the same time, end quote. One of President Trump's staunchest allies in the House won't seek re-election. North Carolina Republican Congressman Mark Meadows reportedly may even leave Congress before his current term expires. Meadows told Politico his work with Mr. Trump's administration is only beginning. Since the president took office, Meadows has been one of his closest advisors in Congress. Queen Elizabeth formally opened a new session of Britain's Parliament today. She laid out Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plans to use his commanding majority to take the UK out of the European Union and shake up the country's public services. Prime Minister Johnson's Conservative Party won last week's election on a pledge to get Brexit done by leaving the European Union on January 31st. In France, there are small signs of progress in the strike that's crippled the country's transport networks. Negotiations between the government and unions continue as hopes rise the disruptions will be over before Christmas. Protesters have been demonstrating against French President Emmanuel Macron's plans to overhaul the country's pension system for more than 2 weeks. That would include raising the retirement age to 64 and ending special privileges for some workers. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Today, the Senate is voting on appropriations bills to keep the government open, with big increases in defense spending and a range of security and social programs. We welcome now a member of the Budget Committee. He's Republican Senator Mike Braun of Indiana, coming to us today from Capitol Hill. So I understand, Senator, that you just came from a procedural vote, which is a prelude to the vote on the ultimate bills. Give me this answer simply. Are you happy with these appropriations? Because we like our senators to be happy if at all possible.
No, I'm unhappy. I'm on the Budget Committee, and it's probably the most important committee here that has the least amount of relevance, because budgets went out the door about 20 years ago that we actually did, appropriated to, and lived with. So there are so many escape clauses. That's what's fueling these trillion-dollar deficits. A lot of that's mandatory spending. That's a trick here. You change it from discretionary to mandatory. And I'm one of the few that votes if there's not any reform, if you don't see anything actually changing, we're putting a big load on our kids and grandkids. So this is a pleasure for me to vote against this stuff today.
So Senator, if you could take a blue pencil and go through this, where would you cut?
So that's the big deal here. We as Republicans and conservatives, for me, defense is the most important thing we do. Obama did emaciate it back in his stretch. That got pretty well put back to where it needed to be in, I think it was March or April of 2018. And I told my fellow conservatives yesterday at lunch that if we aren't willing to find efficiencies in defense, how are we going to get them to spend less on domestic spending? So that's one issue. Plus, the other side holds the threat of a budget or a government shutdown, and we need to get a bill across that does not shut down the government, so the appropriators and the spenders can't use that as leverage to make you vote yes on these bills. I'm going to be speaking out about that. It's a pleasure because I'm backed up big time in a place like Indiana where we operate in the black, have rainy day funds, things work, we make the hard decisions.
So we're talking with Senator Braun of Indiana, as he just said. So Senator, go back to the defense just for a moment, because if you talk to some senior military people and retired senior military people, they often say, look, we could spend this money better. We need to increase certain spending without a doubt, but there are some things, particularly some big complex weapon systems, that really we don't need as much. If we listen to the military, would we be able to effectuate those efficiencies you talk about?
If we listen to any stakeholder in this government, you're going to get some version that we've got to do it. All I'm saying, thank goodness we're the only reserve currency, so we're able to pay for all this largesse by borrowing $1 trillion a year, throwing it on our kids and grandkids. Those chickens will come home to roost when we completely deplete the Medicare trust fund here in 6 years. Or if some other countries start to become places where people want to park their capital. And then we'll be dealing with it by crisis. I'm saying here, it needs to be across the board. Politically, we can't ask them to cut domestic if we're not willing to constrain defense. And we're spending too much everywhere, and you need the political will to talk about it.
Senator, let's turn now to another issue on your agenda today. As I say, you got a busy day up there on the Hill, and that's the USMCA, that successor to NAFTA.
Yes.
Your colleague, Senator Pat Toomey, has come out. He has an op-ed actually out today.
Yep.
He has spoken out and said, look, he's not all for this because he thinks this is perhaps the only trade agreement that actually will curtail trade in various respects. It's the rules of origin on the automobiles. It's the labor provisions, a lot of provisions. Does he have a point?
Hey, I've come to respect Pat Toomey. He's one of the smartest guys here. We're both fiscal conservatives. And I've also learned that there's nothing pleasing in any of these bills in its totality. So he is focused on some areas that I have heartburn with as well. But this helps farmers out especially, and that's the most struggling part of our economy. It helps manufacturers out. You create a lot of jobs with it. It's a win-win. The things he is talking about, I don't like either, but this is President Trump's signature package along with what they did back in December of 2017 with taxes and jobs. It needed to get across the finish line. Pelosi was playing footsie with it, only agreed on her end because of the political consequences they're realizing with the impeachment saga. So we just disagree on this point. I agree with him on the particularities, not the totality.
Senator Mike Braun of Indiana we're talking with right now. So, Senator, you mentioned the impeachment situation. I'll ask one question about that, which is, you're a juror, so I'm not going to ask you how you're going to vote, because I don't think that's particularly good. But I think we all can agree we probably don't want to come out of this process, however it ends up, sending a signal to future presidents that we approve of calling up foreign leaders and asking them to interfere in our elections. How do we come out of this so we send the right message to the next president?
Well, all along, I don't think anybody liked that generally, but was it impeachable? I think that's the issue we're seeing now. If you look at the political tea leaves, the American public wants to get this behind us, and they don't think the House has made the case. But that shouldn't in any way say that you condone what you were talking about there. So it's like anything here. I think that it's occupied way too much airspace. It's been calculated before they even had a reason in terms of why they wanted to impeach our president. To me, that tainted its origins. So I look at what I came here for, and it is to get a budget done, to maybe weigh in on infrastructure, to lower the cost of health care. And I know I'm solid there with my constituents, Hoosiers, and I think that reflects what the American public wants in general anyway. So
I always like to ask lawmakers about their constituents, and you took us there, the Hoosiers. What do they really care about in Indiana right now? And whether they're Republicans or Democrats, what do you hear from them that they really want out of Washington, and maybe the reverse, don't want out of Washington?
When I ran, it was clearly the cost of health care, border security, and Hoosiers, because we're fiscally responsible, worried about will Medicare, will Social Security be there for future generations. And we need to get back on point there. The budget is an example of where Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid drive all our deficits. Record revenues, because we're at the sweet spot of generating revenues to where you have a vibrant economy and you don't tank the economy with high taxes. We spend too much. Most of it is in the mandatory spending. It's an unpopular topic, but I didn't come here to avoid unpopular topics. We need to do it for future generations.
Okay, Senator, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for your time on what I say is a really busy day. That's Senator Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana. Coming up here, we're going to talk trade with former Senator and former Governor of New Hampshire, Judd Gregg. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
You're not supposed to.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
At Lidl, we're big on the most wonderful meal of the year, starring our award-winning deluxe British broadland free-range turkey from only $5.95 per kilo. Our whole range of fresh British turkeys in store from 19th of December. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2011, Osama bin Laden is captured and killed by U.S. Special Forces after a decade-long manhunt. In 2016, Donald Trump is elected the 45th President of the United States after securing 304 electoral votes over Hillary Clinton's 227. And in 2018, a UN report stating the world has 12 years to prevent irreversible climate change.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows goes into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Far wing elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
To the
it.
sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it!
Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Well, I think it's a bigger question is not the party, it's where President Trump's taken the party. As you mentioned in your introduction, conservatives have historically been for free trade, but this president isn't all that conservative in a lot of areas. For example, he's run up the deficit more in 3 years than any president in our history, and he doesn't seem to believe in international alliances, both of which are at the core of a conservative philosophy. And in the area of trade, there is the issue of him picking winners and losers. He literally picks certain segments of our economy and says, well, I'm going to make you a winner. And other segments of our economy he says, well, I really don't like you or you don't like me, so you're going to be a loser. And these trade negotiations have fallen into that category. And in my opinion, not a lot has been accomplished. And what has been accomplished, except the USMCA, which I do support, but with the Chinese, has been marginal compared to the harm it's created relative to the American consumer and American business trying to be engaged in international trade.
But Senator, is this the sheer force of will of President Trump, or was he addressing a broader issue that people, at least a lot of people across the country, were open to curtailing free trade because globalization they see didn't work that well for them?
Yeah, I think he's a populist president, and populism basically has to have an enemy, and the enemy was free trade for a lot of folks. But the rising economy has been driven in large part by trade, and as you curtail trade, you have an economy that usually contracts. Conservatives genuinely believe, or I think conservatives genuinely believe, that the more open the markets are, the better we're going to be because our nation is more entrepreneurial, it's more aggressive, and we're better at it than other nations. The Chinese are a legitimate competitor, and they do clearly manipulate and have manipulated their currency, and they also take advantage of our intellectual property. But so far, most of the agreements which have been discussed, even though they've talked about those two issues, have not reached any agreement on those issues. And this most recent agreement with the Chinese was an agreement to agree, or an agreement to consider to agree. And so until there's actual payoff, I don't think we're going to get very far. And you got to remember, the Chinese government is not a democracy. They don't think in terms of 4-year elections. They think in terms of decades, because that's how long they've been there and that's how long they expect to be there. So in negotiating with them, you got a little bigger lift than if you think you're going to negotiate with, say, the Europeans.
We're talking with former New Hampshire Senator Judd Gregg. So, Senator Gregg, we just had Senator Mike Braun, a current senator from Indiana, on. He's a member of the Budget Committee. You chaired that committee. He said some things about the deficit, and particularly things like entitlements, some of the mandatory spending, and the deficit we're running up. Do you agree with his position? What should be done?
Well, I agree 100% with it. We're closing in on a debt-to-GDP ratio which mirrors Greece's situation. Fortunately, we're a much stronger economy, and the people of the world have more confidence in us than they did in Greece. But the simple fact is that if you're running $1 trillion a year deficits, it's someday it's going to catch up with you. And it's going to catch up with us as a nation somewhere in the mid-period of the next decade, most likely. And there's going to be a crisis. As he mentioned, other nations may become a better place to put capital, and the United States economy will start to contract. Standard of living will go down as we try to pay off the debt. So running up all this debt is really bad for our kids and our grandkids, and it's a huge mistake. In fact, what they're about to pass in the Senate, they passed it in the House, adds another $500 billion of new debt to the deficit. It's outrageous. I mean, they've doubled the discretionary spending debt in the last couple of years, and now they're going to add another $500 billion to that. And that doesn't even consider the entitlement side of the accounts, where the deficits are going up and the debt is going up astronomically. So he's absolutely right. We've got to get our arms around this deficit and debt issue. It can only be done in a bipartisan way. And unfortunately, there's no leadership for bipartisanship in the Congress or in the presidency these days.
Well, and as we go into an election year, I don't hear any of the candidates particularly talk about getting our arms around the deficit. Let's turn to the New Hampshire primary right now. Exactly, just the opposite. Let's spend more money. As we turn to the New Hampshire primary now, is it less important than it was in the past? People seem to be focused on Iowa, I guess because it's first up. But will New Hampshire play as an important role on the Democratic side seeking the nomination?
Yeah, I think the first three events, New Hampshire, Iowa, New Hampshire, and North Carolina, and South Carolina, are going to have a huge impact on Super Tuesday, which comes in March, when you've got a major vote coming out of California and a number of other large states. So yes, I think actually these three states are once again going to have a significant impact. Whoever comes through these three states finishing first, second, and if it's the same person finishing first, second, they're going to be in a unique position. It's going to really sugar off the field, to use the New Hampshire term, which we use to make maple syrup. It's going to sugar off the field, so you're really going to be down to 2, maybe 3 candidates by the time New Hampshire is over, I think.
Sugar off the field. I'm going to remember that. That's terrific. Many thanks to former New Hampshire Senator and Governor Judd Gregg. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
When you want to deeply understand what's in a portfolio,
$2 billion, not what they were going for it.
Or the next big thing.
He said that from day one, they're going to be profitable.
Or why the excitement is waning.
Who are really worried about recession.
You can find out fastest at Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Messer and Jason Kelly. Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Impeachment is an extraordinary remedy provided for in the U.S. Constitution, and each of the three actions to impeach a U.S. president is in some ways without precedent. But history still guides what we do as a nation when there are conflicts under our Constitution. And David O. Stewart has become a student of that history, starting out as a lawyer in Washington, D.C., where he represented a sitting federal judge in an impeachment trial. He moved on to become an author of books on history and the Constitution, including Impeached, the trial of Andrew Johnson and the fight for Lincoln's legacy. Welcome, Mr. Stewart, now back to Bloomberg. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. And let's start out with sort of an historical comparison, compare and contrast. Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, William Jefferson Clinton, and now Donald Trump. What is similar among those situations and what is different?
The most obvious similarity is they're partisan. Alexander Hamilton told us in 1788 that impeachments would be partisan, that they involve a political remedy for an offense to the public, and that the comparative strength of the parties would determine impeachments, and that's the way it's been. With Johnson, he was impeached by Republicans, and then with Nixon, again, it was the Democrats who impeached a Republican president. In Clinton, it was Republicans impeaching a Democratic president, and now it's reversed. So that's a common theme. People seem to be surprised by it, but it's about as surprising as having the sun come up in the east. Another factor that's important is the impeachment happens late in a presidency. This is now entering the fourth year of Mr. Trump's term. It reflects a buildup of frustration with controversial behavior, inappropriate behavior by a president until you hit a breaking point, and enough people in the country and in the Congress say, we really can't tolerate that. And we've seen that both Johnson and Trump were late in their first terms, in Johnson's case, his only term. Nixon and Clinton were impeached in their second terms. So I think those are constants. You can also see at least three of the presidents were angry men who made sort of grievance part of their politics. That's Johnson, Nixon, and Trump.
David, I also wonder if there's a parallel between Andrew Johnson and President Trump that is different from President Nixon, different from President Clinton, and that is President Trump is proud of what he did. He doesn't deny it. He said, absolutely, I did it, I'm proud of it. Andrew Johnson presumably was proud of the fact that he wanted to pick his own cabinet the way he wanted to pick his cabinet. Richard Nixon was never proud of it. He denied he did it, but he wasn't proud of it. And William Jefferson Clinton apologized for some of his conduct leading up. Again, not saying he should be impeached for it, but is there a parallel there? Because we now have a president who's saying, yeah, I did it. It was, as he called, a perfect telephone conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine.
I think you make a very good point. I've sometimes condensed President Trump's defense is essentially, so what if I did? And I think Johnson had the same attitude. I meant to do this. I did it on purpose, and I'm right. And the Nixon and Clinton cases are not like that. Another comparison between Johnson and Trump is there were questions that they were sensitive to about the legitimacy of their presidencies. Johnson, as an inappropriate successor to Abraham Lincoln, who had been president when Johnson was vice president, then was assassinated. And we know that Mr. Trump is very angry about people who keep mentioning that he lost the popular vote in 2016 and suggest he's not appropriate and truly the choice of the people. So there are lots of parallels.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I hadn't thought of that, David, but the possibility there might be a little insecurity, even a little defensiveness that may have led to some of the conduct that ultimately triggered the impeachment.
Indeed, I think that's possible.
Okay, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. That's David O. Stewart. I'm pleased to say that we're going to be having much more with him coming up in our second hour on Bloomberg Radio. We're going to be talking with David Stewart, among other things, about exactly the process going forward, whether Nancy Pelosi can truly hold off on sending the articles of impeachment over to the Senate to have them vote, and does she have much leverage, really, with respect to the process that Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, will pursue on the Senate side. Also in the second hour, we're going to have Graham Allison of Harvard. He's in the Kennedy School there on the U.S.-China trade deal. That's all coming up in Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The NFL's Carolina Panthers is getting a sibling. Charlotte will get a Major League Soccer team with a franchise price tag between $300 and $325 million. Now, this new soccer team is the pet project of billionaire hedge funder David Tepper. He owns the Carolina Panthers. The soccer team will begin play in 2021 and can sign players immediately. Some of the names under consideration are Charlotte FC, Charlotte Crown FC, Charlotte Fortune FC, and the Charlotte Monarchs. Washington is the most exciting food city of the year, according to Bloomberg's food and restaurants editor. Despite the hype from L.A., the nation's capital is the town everyone should pay attention to, thanks to its manageable size and incredibly diverse microcosm of cultures. Toss in D.C.'s high-earning locals who like to eat out, relative value, and innovative and activist chefs, and you have a recipe for one incredible dining scene. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
To see something far away, you can either get a powerful telescope or you can go there.
Talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
When you take a look at the consumers in China, it remains challenging.
We go there.
To what extent is access to cheap credit part of the equation?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My name is Hunter Hayes. I know myself, and I know my buzzed warning signs. One shot is about knowing my limits, or not necessarily knowing my limits.
I start with one shot to have a good time.
One of the signs that I'm starting to feel a little buzz is when I start solving not only my own problems, but the entire world's problems. When I know I'm going out, I know I'm going to start with calling for a ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all claiming fresh records as investors chase gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. S&P up 9, holding above 3,200 now, 3,200 and change. Up by 0.3%. We've got the Dow up 92. That's a gain of 0.3%. NASDAQ higher by 40, up 0.5% again. Records for U.S. stocks with the S&P now at 3201. S&P 500 index being led higher by consumer and communication shares. Benchmarks up more than 7% in the fourth quarter and more than 27% so far this year. Gold up 0.3%, $14.80 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 0.6%, $61.27 a barrel. And again, the 10-year up 5/30 seconds at yield 1.89%. So, what's ahead for markets and the global economy in 2020? Jean-Yves Fillion is the CEO of BNP Paribas USA. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
Worldwide, there is no question the economy is going to slow down. However, living in the U.S., based in New York, I think the U.S. economy remains very, very strong. You know, look at GDP, look at consumer confidence, consumer spending. It remains very robust.
Garden restaurants down the most in 3 months after reporting quarterly sales at Olive Garden that trailed analyst expectations as chains battle to draw customers who are increasingly reluctant to eat out. We have got shares of Darden restaurants down now by 4.2%. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here he is, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs aren't sharing in the gains among U.S. stocks. The S&P ADR index is little changed, while the S&P 500 is up 0.3%. Now, Japan's SoftBank Group has risen 2.1% in U.S. trading. Dish Network CEO Charlie Ergen said SoftBank offered to help his company finance a new U.S. wireless network, according to the Wall Street Journal. SoftBank controls mobile phone company Sprint, which T-Mobile U.S. wants to buy. The UK's Just Eat has climbed 4.8%. Two suitors for the food delivery company, Takeaway.com and Process, increased their offers. Now, Just Eat has favored Takeaway's all-stock deal rather than an all-cash proposal from Process. Sweden's Ericsson has lost 4.1%. The local securities firm Otto said the network equipment maker's sales growth this quarter may trail estimates. And the newspaper Dagens Industry reported that the company contacted analysts in an attempt to have them cut projections. Ericsson denied the paper's story. Japan's Nikon has fallen 3.2%. The camera maker was lowered to neutral from buy at Nomura Instanet. Data compiled by Bloomberg shows the company now has just 2 buy ratings versus 10 holds and 3 sells, Charlie.
All right, we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, tracking those ADRs for us. Again, recapping here, U.S. equities, they're at records. S&P up 9 to 3201, a gain of 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships. The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Democrats running for president debate again in Los Angeles tonight. A federal court strikes down the health insurance requirement, but says Obamacare may still survive. And House Speaker Pelosi may say not so fast on the Senate impeachment trial. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. The House voted last night to impeach President Trump on 2 counts, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is eager to get on with a shortened trial. But when that trial starts may not be up to the Senate. David O. Stewart, he is historian and a constitutional lawyer, is still with us. So, David, you heard Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, after the vote last night, unscripted, said, well, you know, we might not send the articles over right away until we see exactly what the rules are. They, of course, want to have a fuller trial than what Mitch McConnell is proposing. Does she have the right to do that?
Well, the Constitution doesn't say one way or the other, so she has the power to do that. I think it's an open question whether it would be wise to do that. It's the practice. We've only got 3 presidential impeachments, and only 2 actually got this far. I should correct myself. So what we do know is when the House approved the articles, they sent them over to the Senate. And holding out is a strategy I don't entirely understand. First of all, I'm not sure what leverage it inflicts. It's basically telling the president, you must stay in office. That doesn't seem such a terrible punishment. And it also, when you are holding yourself out as the defender of the Constitution, departing from constitutional practice seems potentially to undermine your own message.
And in fairness to the speaker, today she may have thought differently about it. Some people around her, at least, have said, you know what, I don't think she's going to do that. I think she'll send them over right away. But there is one and maybe two issues here. One is, as I say, Democrats, whether they're in the House or the Senate, want Mitch McConnell to take a different approach to the trial. Do they have any leverage on that? And the other, of course, is this vote on USMCA, because Mitch McConnell kind of put that in place, saying we're not going to take that up until the trial's over.
It's hard to get leverage on Senator McConnell because he's just pays no attention to it generally. And I think in this instance, particularly because the president will back him. And it seems to me that the fact that we don't have testimony from very key witnesses is a shame. And it's shameful, frankly. And we should have that testimony. But it's a question of changing him. In the Clinton case, there was no actual trial in the Senate. They had a couple of depositions in confidential settings, and then they had closing argument. And there's a wonderful story that's come out recently that the lack of a trial in that case was because the Senate Majority Leader, Trent Lott, didn't want it. He called in the House managers who wanted a trial and said, this is a stupid impeachment. You're going to get my senators beaten in the next elections. So do it fast. Just get it over with. And, so McConnell can point to that precedent and say, well, I'm just doing what Trent Lott did.
It's fascinating. That's a fascinating story. I had not heard that, actually, David. In the meantime, let's talk about Mitch McConnell for a moment, because he has now come out and really taken issue with the articles as voted out. This is what he said.
The articles aren't just unproven. They're also constitutionally incoherent.
Now, David, I'm not sure what constitutionally incoherent means exactly, but let's take up the second article, which is obstruction of Congress. One of the things that Republicans are saying is the president asserted a privilege, and it was working its way through the courts. Why is that a high crime and misdemeanor? Isn't it his right to say, I don't want my people to testify, and then litigate it up, and the Supreme Court decide?
Well, there are a couple of features of this situation that puzzle me. In the Nixon tapes case, we got that decision in 40 days. I don't know why the courts can't be made to move faster on these disputes. That's a fundamental puzzle. It's the same court structure as we had 45 years ago. And I don't think it's going to be that the problem with blocking this impeachment trial justifies taking the extra time now.
So you really are a student of history. I mean, you wrote a book on the impeachment of Andrew Johnson and what it meant. I wonder about if there's anything from history, whether it's Andrew Johnson or Richard Nixon, who was not impeached but resigned before he was impeached, or President Clinton, who was impeached. Is there any lesson to be learned about what comes next? What does it mean for the party? Who comes out well, who doesn't? Is there a pattern in all this that we might apply conceivably to this one?
I do think that's the critical question, and it's hard to be sure. Our data set is small, and Mr. Trump doesn't fit comfortably into the ordinary conduct of most presidents. But the two we have examples of, which would be Clinton and Johnson, who ended up remaining in office, they were somewhat reined in, I think, as president thereafter. And there's a book on impeachment that was done by Chief Justice Rehnquist. It's not a great book, but he makes an important point, which is impeachment is a sort of Damocles that hangs over the head of a president. It is the one way he can truly fail. And once you get that failing grade, even if you survive the Senate trial, it's a black mark that lives with you forever. And the notion that Mr. Trump would then continue to act in a way that will bring a second black mark is kind of unimaginable. So I think we could well see that he amends his conduct to some extent, but again, predicting this particular president is a tricky business.
And the sword of Damocles is an interesting point, because I think one question is, if we use this sword too often, do we dull the edge?
It's a great question, again, and I think we're all conscious of the fact that we had one impeachment of a president in 180 years, And now we've had 3 and 45 years. And so why is that happening? And is that going to change the remedy? I think, in fact, we're getting it now because Congress has lost so much power. Frankly, they've given up so much power, and presidents have grabbed it from both parties. And this is the power they have left. And so they reach for it. If the sword of Damocles becomes dulled, it will be used less.
Yeah, which will not be good for our Constitution, I dare say. Okay, many thanks now to David O. Stewart. He's author of Impeached, The Trial of Andrew Johnson and the Fight for Lincoln's Legacy. Tonight, the Democratic candidates for president appear in yet another televised debate, but this one will be after the impeachment vote. We'll talk with Republican strategist and political consultant Rick Davis. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
What do you count? Interest rates?
If you get marginally higher interest rates, does that bring the PE multiple in?
Trade figures?
China driving a tectonic shift in the availability of money.
Employment data?
What is happening with the headcount?
You could just leave all that to us.
Is it a one-and-done tariff adjustment?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Right where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation.
So it's already December 19th. Well, at Boots, this Christmas, there's better than half price on selected gifts. Save money on gifts like Braun Series 5 electric foil shaver, recommended retail price £199.99, now only £89.99 on other selected products. Get on it today at the What to Buy Your Bestie for the Leasty boutique at your nearest Boots in London White City Shopping Centre. So gift like you get them before it ends 24th of December at selected stores and Boots.com.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.